If you have a closet full of shoes, but you seem to wear the same few pairs over and over again, you're not alone. Today we're going to declutter the shoes that you no longer wear, need, or enjoy, and I'm going to show you 7 simple rules to help you decide what stays and what goes. If we're meeting for the first time, my name is Sheila, and I help people declutter, downsize, and move with less stress and more peace. Now, before we jump into the 7 rules, I want you to know that these aren't hard and fast rules that you have to follow perfectly. They're simply a framework to make decluttering a little bit easier. If even one of these rules helps you let go of a pair of shoes that you've been struggling with, then that's a win. So let's get into the 7 rules. Rule number 1 is the day after day rule. Ask yourself, which shoes do I find myself reaching for day after day? When people start decluttering a category like shoes, they often freeze before they even begin because they don't know where to start. Or in the case of shoes, they think, I don't even know which shoes I actually wear. This rule breaks you right out of that indecision by asking you to focus on the shoes that you naturally reach for on a regular basis. So instead of asking yourself, which shoes should I get rid of? Ask yourself, which shoes do I find myself reaching for day after day? And if you're not sure, here's a simple test. Imagine that you kicked your shoes off by the front door every day for a week and you never put them away. At the end of that week, what shoes would be sitting there? Those are your favorites. Those are the shoes that you're actually reaching for. And for a lot of us, that shoe pile by the door wouldn't be very big because we wear the same pairs over and over, and there is no shame in that. It's okay if you wear the same few pairs of shoes all the time. Your habits are giving you valuable information. The fact that you're reaching for those shoes over and over again tells you that they are still serving you well. So those shoes probably aren't where you need to spend your time and energy right now. We already know they're earning their place, so let's set those aside for the moment and focus on the pairs that you're less certain about. Sometimes we think decluttering is all about deciding what to let go of, but it's also about deciding what to keep. So those shoes that you wear day after day, those are your keepers. You've already made that decision by wearing them all the time. And yes, deciding to keep something is just as much a decluttering decision as letting something go. Just by doing that, you've already made the rest of the process a whole lot easier. Rule number 2 is the reality check rule. Have you ever grabbed a pair of shoes from your closet and thought, oh, I haven't worn these in forever? And then later that day, you hear yourself saying, oh, I remember why I haven't worn these in forever. Before you decide whether to keep or donate a pair of shoes that you're uncertain about, do a quick reality check. People often make decisions based on memory. Maybe you're looking at a pair of shoes and thinking, I don't remember if I still like these. When it comes to our shoes, our memory is not always reliable. So before you make that decision, stop guessing and put them on. Now, you don't have to do this with every pair. Save this rule for the shoes that you're genuinely having trouble deciding about. Walk around the house, pay attention to how they feel. Do they pinch? Do they slide off? Do they still feel like you? Did you forget how much you enjoy wearing them? Or maybe you forgot how much you dislike wearing them. Taking those shoes for a spin gives you better information than your memory does. When I'm working with clients, one of 2 things will usually happen. Either they'll put the shoes on and remember how much they dislike them, or they'll realize that they like them more than they thought they did. So if you dislike the shoes, then letting them go will lighten your load. However, if you rediscover the shoes and you start wearing them again, then that's also a win because now you have another pair of shoes that you like to wear. Either way, it's a win because you're making your decision based on today's reality instead of yesterday's memory. So now that you've identified your favorites and done a reality check on the shoes that you weren't sure about, let's look at your shoes through another lens. Rule number 3 is the friction-free rule. Ask yourself, how much friction do these shoes create in my life? Now, this isn't just about literal friction on your feet, although there is that. It's about friction in your lifestyle. Sometimes it's not that we don't like the shoes, it's just that those shoes come with too many conditions. Let me give you an example. I had a client who had a pair of heels that were absolutely gorgeous, but she called them her 1-hour shoes. She loved them, and she thought they looked beautiful, but wearing them required an elaborate plan. She and her husband had to park close to the restaurant. She would put the shoes on right before they walked into the restaurant. Then they would go straight inside and sit down, and as soon as they left the restaurant and got in the car, those shoes would come off. They weren't bad shoes, they were just high friction shoes. Your version of friction might look different. Maybe it's the shoes that can only be worn if the weather is dry, or maybe they take too long to lace up. Maybe they require band-aids or blister pads before you wear them. Maybe they're beautiful, but every outing has to revolve around these shoes. Every time you think about wearing them, you immediately start thinking about all the accommodations that you will have to make. Every one of those conditions creates a little more friction, and eventually there's so much friction that you stop reaching for those shoes altogether. Not because you don't like them, but because they're asking too much from you. Life already gives us enough things to have to plan around, and your shoes shouldn't be one of them. If wearing a pair of shoes always requires a special plan, then it's okay to choose a pair that simply lets you get on with your day. Decluttering is all about simplifying, and part of simplifying is removing friction. Rule number 4 is the better days rule. Ask yourself, have these shoes seen better days? Sometimes we hold on to old shoes simply because they're still technically wearable. But if you've already bought a newer pair to replace them, then ask yourself why you're keeping both. Maybe you've already replaced your everyday shoes, but the older ones just keep getting pushed farther and further back into the back of the closet. Or maybe you bought a new pair of walking shoes because the old ones had lost their support. Ask yourself, do I really need both? Because every time you bring something new into your home without letting go of what it replaced, you've just doubled the amount of space that category of thing takes up. One of the simplest ways to keep your shoe collection from growing out of control is to follow the one in, one out rule. When a new pair comes in to replace an old one, give yourself permission to let the old pair go. Or if you're really trying to downsize, maybe you bring in one pair and let 2 old pairs go. Take yard shoes, for example. A lot of times we start off with a brand new pair of shoes. They get a little older and more worn out, so we retire them, they become our yard shoes, and we bring in a new pair. But we keep the old pair. Then we get another new pair of shoes. But we still have that first pair, and now our collection of yard shoes continues to grow. If you need an old pair of shoes for painting or yard work, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you have 5 pairs of yard shoes, it might be time to ask yourself if you really need all of them. How many pairs do you actually need? Shoes don't have to completely fall apart before you've earned the right to let them go. If they've seen better days and they've already been replaced, they've done their job. Thank them for serving you well and let them go. Make room for the shoes that you're actually wearing today. Rule number 5 is the today rule. This is one of my favorite decluttering principles because it applies to almost everything we own, including our shoes. Ask yourself, do these shoes fit my life today? Not just do they fit my feet, but do they fit my life? One of the biggest reasons we hang on to shoes we never wear is because we're holding on to a version of ourselves from an earlier season of life. I know I did. I held on to my tap shoes for 20 years after my last musical. But life changes, jobs change, our health changes, our routines change. Sometimes our feet even change. The shoes that were perfect for one season of life aren't always the shoes that we need for the next. That doesn't mean there was anything wrong with buying them. It doesn't mean they were a mistake. It simply means your life has changed. So think about the life you're living today. Do these shoes support that life? Or are they supporting a lifestyle that you don't have anymore? Maybe you used to wear heels every day to the office, but now you work from home. Or maybe you used to love dressing up, but these days you find yourself reaching for more comfortable walking shoes instead. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's simply a reflection of the season of life you're in. Your shoes should support the life you're living today, not the life you lived 10 years ago. By now you've made a lot of decisions about what to keep and what to let go, but there's one category of shoes that's often the hardest to part with. Rule number 6 is the shoe story rule. Ask yourself, what story am I telling myself about these shoes? Sometimes we keep shoes not because we wear them, but because we think we are supposed to own them. Let me give you an example. When my daughter was in 1st grade, she came home one day and she told me, "I wish I had a pretty mom." Now, obviously that stung a little, but because I try to model self-confidence for my children, I said, "What are you talking about? I'm gorgeous." And she said, "Yeah, I wish you were really, really pretty." So I asked her what she meant, and she said, "Pretty moms wear high heels." Now, I hadn't worn high heels in a long time by that point, and I still really don't. But my daughter had absorbed a picture of what a pretty mom was supposed to look like, and that picture included high heels. And sometimes we do the same thing with our own shoes. We think a successful person should own heels, an outdoorsy person should own hiking boots, a fashionable person should own designer shoes. The question isn't whether you are supposed to own them. The question is, do you actually wear them? Or are you keeping them because of the story you're telling yourself about who you're supposed to be? There's nothing wrong with realizing that you are simply not a high heel person or a hiking boot person or a fancy shoe person. You don't have to live up to someone else's idea of who you should be. That is their story. This is yours. So choose the shoes that reflect the person that you actually are and let the rest go. If you've gotten any value out of this video so far, it would mean the world to me if you would hit that subscribe button so that I can reach more people and help more people. Thank you so much. Let's keep going. So far we've talked about what shoes you actually wear, what fits, what creates friction, what has seen better days, what belongs in your life today, and even the stories we tell ourselves about our shoes. But none of these rules matter if you don't trust yourself to decide. So rule number 7 is the trust yourself rule. Ask yourself, do I trust myself to make these decisions? One of the things I hear from people all the time is, I'm afraid of making the wrong decluttering decision. And honestly, I can't even count the number of times that someone has told me that decluttering stresses them out because they're afraid they're going to make a mistake. So how do you know you're going to make the right choice? Well, here's the good news. There isn't one right way to declutter. And that's because decluttering isn't about finding the perfect answer. It's about making the best decision you can and then moving forward. So the 7 rules that we've talked about are designed to help you make decisions with more confidence and less second guessing. But remember, this is all about progress, not perfection. So if you've used these 7 rules, if you've trusted your gut, you're not going to get it wrong. The stakes are almost never as high as we imagine they are. And life is too short to spend so much time worrying about whether you are decluttering the right way. So trust yourself and don't look back. And if you'd like a little more help on your decluttering journey, be sure to check out this video right here. I'll meet you there.